Hello, this is Angel Smothers, and I'm going to be presenting to you content for the Module 2 portion of the Advanced Spiritual Care course. The title for this presentation is Faith, Health, and Spiritual Care. So we talked about in Module 1 the difference between spirituality and religion, and looked at the similarities between those two terms and the differences. And we talked about the fact that faith community nurses, as faith community nurses, we need to be not only prepared to support the spiritual health needs of congregants within our own faith background, but also individuals from other faith backgrounds. And so we talked about the importance of knowledge related to the different faith backgrounds. And so now we're going to take a little closer look at how this might work for a faith community nurse. So let's consider, how does religion or spirituality, faith, influence lifestyle, behavior, and healthcare choices? I think we've all had experiences where individuals made healthcare decisions based on their personal religious or spiritual beliefs. So, we know that spirituality does help derive meaning and purpose for our lives, and that religion provides rules for living and guidelines for behavior that people within the same religion often hold it to be true, or at least within the same denomination of the different religions. And as a part of what we do as faith community nurses, we need to be aware of the different dimensions of health, the different spiritual dimensions of health. And dimensions of spirituality need to be considered in relation to health. So we can think about a person's physical health, their mental health, their emotional health, but we also need to take into account their spiritual health. A broader viewpoint from a faith perspective emerges as a tool for faith community nurses. And so being able to understand that spiritual health is a part of the overall health, holistic health of an individual is an important part of what we do as faith community nurses. As individuals, meaning each of us completely different and unique in our own ways, beliefs give meaning and purpose to life. Religion provides the rules and hypothetical measuring stick of good and bad. And spirituality provides a filter for emotions and behaviors. So you can see how beliefs, religion, spirituality all have overlapping but also unique aspects that a faith community nurse needs to take into consideration. For example, Mrs. Jones believes after her loved one dies that they go to heaven where all is good because of the pure presence of the divine. When she sees a red cardinal, she believes it's a message from a loved one in heaven. Red cardinals make her feel happy and comforted. She requires a framed red cardinal remain at her bedside at all times. See how this is a portion of this is her beliefs, okay? But then there's also, and her beliefs would be the red cardinal, okay? Then there's also the religious and the spiritual beliefs of heaven and the presence of the divine. And so the three of these together make up a person's, really their spiritual health. Understanding faith from the patient's perspective really is critical. We have our own views as faith community nurses, but we have to be able to take a step back from our own views, our own perspective, and really move in the direction of the patient's perspective. It really is critical to making sure we provide quality spiritual care. Supporting family members in recognizing the need for referral to clergy or mental health colleagues is an important part of what we do as well. And, you've got to keep in mind, as faith community nurses, we are bound by the same confidentiality standards as nurses would be in any setting. And so we have to get permission from the patient to be able to share the needs or make a referral to someone else, whether it's a clergy or a mental health colleague. A lot of times we get in the mindset as faith community nurses that we work in this church and we work with the pastor, and so if something happens, we should be able to call the pastor. But the truth of it is, unless the congregant gives you permission, you're not permitted to contact the pastor or the clergy, because that is their right to keep their information confidential. Now, a person's sense of duty, obligation, or moral responsibility that comes from their beliefs may directly influence their choice of a vocation. So when we think about vocations and we think about our own personal vocations, you know, I think if you talk to a large percentage of nurses, they will tell you that they feel nursing is a calling, that nursing in itself is a ministry. And so oftentimes we pick the career path that we do because of a feeling or a sense of duty, obligation, or moral responsibility. And so understanding where a congregant is coming from in this area is important when you're working with them related to their spiritual health and well-being. So let's talk about Mrs. Jones again. Mrs. Jones' faith tradition taught her to care for people in need. She volunteers at the local soup kitchen and donates proceeds from her artwork. Spiritual care for Mrs. Jones may include a visit to the soup kitchen and assisting her to recruit volunteers. This is so she can feel secure the soup kitchen will remain a success while her participation slowly decreases. And so what this example is showing you is that she finds meaning in the work that she does at the soup kitchen. So helping someone with spiritual health doesn't mean you go to their home always, lecture to them, educate them, and then leave. It may be that as a faith community nurse, the thing that you can do that will have the most strength is to walk beside the congregant and support them where they are and what they find to be meaningful and important. The experiences a person has in relation to the divine or sacred and the significance emotionally of these experiences to that person really directly relate to their faith. So how a person, the experiences that a person has had, what their views are about a connection with the divine and the sacred really relate back to their individual faith walk. And so we need to find out early in the support that we provide to our congregants as faith community nurses. We need to find out early what is going on that in this person's thought process about their own spiritual walk so that we can go where they are, meet them where they're at, and support them in the decisions and the progress that they need to make. A lack of belief or even negative beliefs in relation to experience, emotions may cause a person to believe that they're at the mercy of fate or luck. You're going to encounter people that you're working with that have a negative view to where even if they are religious people, they go to a faith community on a regular basis, they join their faith community, they may still have a negative outlook because of their experiences. They may say things like, well, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm always going to have bad luck, or God's forsaken me, or things like that. And we have to be prepared that it's not always going to be a happy emotional experience. We meet with a lot of congregants and they say things like, with God all things are possible, or I'm going to walk this out with God, or my faith in God has allowed me to make this progress. But you're also going to encounter people who have that opposite negative emotion. So you have to be prepared for both sides of that coin. So back to Mrs. Jones. The association of cardinals as heavenly messengers brings her joy. And even if we don't believe that cardinals are spiritual messengers, we're not going to approach it from our views. We're going to approach it from her beliefs and her views. And spiritual care for Miss Jones includes using her experiences as a tool to assist her through more difficult experiences and by relating them to positive experiences. So even if she has a negative approach, we're not going to, say things to her that will make her approach more negative. We're going to build her up with the positives that she does have in her life. So what about courage and growth? The ability to integrate experiences into present beliefs and structures, or the ability to let go of existing beliefs so new ones can emerge. That's courage and that's growth. Okay, so our congregants are on a personal spiritual walk, a journey of their own. And as faith community nurses, we're there to walk beside them, to support them, to encourage them, and to, to walk the walk with them. And so really, when you're looking at advanced spiritual care, it's learning how to separate our own personal beliefs and convictions, and instead walk alongside the person so that you can support them as they make progress in their personal walks and beliefs. A lack of belief or negative beliefs, when courage is needed to face change in new situations, may result in a fatalistic attitude and the temptation to give up or give in to despair. And so if they're approaching a situation with a negative belief in place, I'll never get better, I'm never going to get a cure, or I'm always the one that ends up in the hospital, these things can end up with a despair or giving up. So we want to come alongside these folks and support them with courage and allow them growth spiritually. I think we've all encountered situations where we encounter a storm in our lives, and we've all encountered those storms. But during the storm, we're exhausted and we almost lose hope at times. But when we get through the storm, we look back and we say, you know what, I'm a stronger person because of that, because that happened. So we have to be prepared to support our congregants through courage and growth. And the role of spiritual care provider really is to encourage hope in new situations, and also to be responsible for the suicide screenings. So even though we're not in a hospital setting or an office, doctor's office setting, we still need to be prepared for the suicide screenings. And if someone has suicidal or homicidal ideation, we have to take the step forward to get them protection. You can contact their primary care provider and discuss the situation, but just like you would handle it in any setting, if someone is experiencing suicidal or homicidal ideas, you have to take that very seriously. So I encourage you to spend time learning how to complete a suicide screening. I'm going to also include some examples of this in the classroom. So Mrs. Jones eventually moves to an assisted living home. There's no yard for birds. It gives her art studio, gives it up, and is unable to volunteer at the soup kitchen. Her past experiences and faith help her translate so much loss into a positive attitude. She decorates her room with red birds. She creates art out of everyday supplies, and she shares her stories of cardinal sightings with other people. So see how she took previous experiences that were positive, that were built off of her faith and her beliefs. And now when she's in a tough situation where isolation, loneliness, and despair could kick in, she's recalling those moments. And so you as the faith community nurse, going with her to the soup kitchen, encouraging her during those times, have allowed her to have this positive relationship to build on when she's in a time of distress. When we think about community, we think about participation in formal or informal groups. Okay? A community might be a faith community, such as a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, where groups of people with similar beliefs come together. A community can also be a location where your home's located. It could be a community of friends. It's where members share common beliefs, meaning in life, and practice. Provides a person with a feeling of belonging and security, just knowing that you're not alone. And those people who lack community often feel abandoned, isolated, and lonely. And friends, loneliness can be a major issue with congregants as we're looking at people who have lost loved ones or who are being placed in long-term care. Loneliness is a major concern. The role of the faith community nurse is to create opportunities for community. And so while we are not in ourselves a community for the congregant, two of us are better than one, but we still want to increase opportunities. And some of the activities that I've seen faith community nurses do, especially pre-COVID, but I think we're going to get back to this, are tea parties in faith communities where the shut-ins join in, or the faith community nurse visits the shut-ins for some tea and conversation. But those individuals who can come out to the faith community setting do so. And they have tea parties, or they have one faith community that I know of does an ornament exchange at Christmas. But not just at Christmas. We need community all throughout the year. So Mrs. Jones, in addition to family, the members of her faith community become a second family. The ministry at the Soup Kitchen was a network of support as well as the artist community. So she has 3 different communities that now she can pull from for support and encouragement. So what about authority and guidance? Faith provides a source of authority for beliefs and meaning in life. When there is no obvious reason or explanation for why something has happened or hasn't happened, we have our faith that guides us and leads us. For those who lack belief or have a negative belief system in place, there may be no foundation for them to make good decisions. Mrs. Jones turns to her faith community and to her personal faith for guidance and situational understanding. Why did she have to go to the long-term care facility? Why did she have to give up her art studio? Why is she not able to volunteer at the Soup Kitchen? Mrs. Jones' faith community nurse can assist her to seek guidance and answers, as well as providing presence, a listening ear, and prayer. See how advanced spiritual care really is about all of those core nursing things that we learned early in our careers, but sometimes we let slip away from us. We have to be present with our patients. We have to listen. We have to be prayerful. Transcendent values. Values such as sanctity of life, importance of truth-telling, treating others as we want to be treated. These are transcendent values. And when a congregant has lack of belief or they have negative beliefs, it may lead to a belief system that's based off of a more self-serving system. That would never happen to me, or I have to do this for myself or it won't get done. And those types of negative beliefs can really be detrimental to our congregants. Mrs. Jones believes that she should live her life as a demonstration of the positive characteristics she believes are an inherent part of the divine. Think of the fruits of the Spirit: love, peace, joy, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. The role of the faith community nurse would be to not only shed light on the person's systems of belief, but also explore the foundations of these systems. That's why it's so important for us to understand different faith backgrounds and come alongside individuals who need support. And here's the list of the fruits of life, of a life lived in faith. In the Christian faith background, we call these fruits of the Spirit. Mrs. Jones' personal qualities were apparent and caused others to want to be in her presence. She was willing to share her faith. It's so important for the faith community nurse to personally seek and cultivate these qualities in our congregants. It really is the next step in us as faith community nurses being advanced in spiritual care. When we're defining spiritual care, there really is no concrete definition, but rather it's emerging several definitions to complete an understanding. Consider this: the practical expression of presence, guidance, and interventions, individual and communal, to support, nurture, or encourage a person's or group's ability to achieve wholeness, health, personal, spiritual, and social well-being. It's the integration of body, mind, and spirit, and the sense of connection to self and others and a higher power. So you can see how the emerging of several definitions here really aid us in understanding what spiritual care is. It's also care that which recognizes and responds to the needs of the human spirit when faced with trauma, ill health, or sadness. And it can include the need for meaning or for someone's self-worth, to express oneself, for faith support, perhaps for rites or prayer or sacrament. Spiritual care begins with encouraging the person, encouraging them to have human contact in a compassionate relationship and move it whatever direction the need requires. This is spiritual care. Here are the aspects of spiritual care. First, building that trusting relationship with our congregant. It's our willingness to walk with another without controlling the destination. We're just walking alongside them. Being a sensitive listener, compassion for the individual, for other people, relationship, a caring attitude. Also making appropriate referrals when needed and when the congregant agrees to those referrals to clergy or to mental health providers. It includes self-reflection. Sometimes we have to move beyond our personal beliefs and biases to be able to allow us to walk in silence and active listening with a congregant in need. Being present, feeling connectedness with the congregant, with their family, and with the divine power. Hope is also a spiritual care aspect. Not hope for a cure, not always, but hope, which is a peace about what the future will hold. Kindness, openness, and silence are all important aspects of spiritual care. Spiritual literacy is also important with faith community nursing. It's a hallmark of faith community nursing. It's the blending of nursing science, faith, wisdom, and clinical experience. This forms of spiritual literacy. It allows us to not be one-sided with our own personal faith background. We use nursing science, we use faith, we use wisdom and clinical experience to form a spiritual literacy that we can use as faith community nurses to support our congregants. And it's the ability to recognize the divine in self, others, and our experiences. To become spiritually literate, and we need to be, a nurse must continually strive to develop nursing skills and expertise while growing in faith and the understanding of how to care holistically for others by experiencing and providing care. Thank you so much for your time during this presentation, and I look forward to discussing additional concepts of advanced spiritual care in the modules to come.